We all know that getting the right leaders in place for PE portfolio companies is an absolute must. It is one of the single most important decisions PE investors can make, and getting it right can yield huge returns, but getting it wrong is always costly. In fact, some estimates suggest the cost of a bad portfolio company CEO can be up to 20 times the executive's total compensation. So next time you're thinking about upgrading the leadership, avoid these 5 mistakes. 1, starting with the ideal profile. I see this all the time. You have an idea of who you want to hire in your mind, and conventional wisdom would say that's a great place to start. Unfortunately, this limits your thinking and shrinks the candidate pool right from the start. Instead, start with the business objectives. What is it that you want this person to achieve in the next 1 to 3 years? Then identify the skills and background that would support those outcomes. Number 2, not engaging enough candidates. This one is a real problem because it can have several knock-on effects. First off, a CEO search should be an iterative process. That means you're learning as you go along. For example, in the beginning of a search, you might think experience in a specific industry is the single most important characteristic a candidate can have. But as you talk to candidates during the process, you learn that you actually want someone with an adjacent industry experience that's more relevant because the company's revenue mix is forecast to change over the next few years. Whatever the reason is, you need to talk to several candidates so you're learning throughout the process. Second, if you focus all your attention on one candidate and they drop out at the last minute, you're essentially having to start the search all over from scratch. Number 3, no focus on KPIs. Whether you've engaged an executive search firm or you're managing the process internally, you should establish monthly or weekly KPIs. This ensures the process is relatively predictable and not reliant on luck. You wouldn't run a sales process by simply reaching out to a few people. So don't do this with arguably the most important decision you will make for a portfolio company. I always suggest 3 KPIs to track. 1 would be candidates identified and contacted. 2 would be number of candidates interviewed. And 3 would be number of candidates actually presented to leadership. You can track more, but these should be sufficient for driving a process. One more thing. If you're working with a search firm and they won't guarantee KPIs, run away as fast as you can. Number 4, too many interviewees or death by committee. If you have too many interviewees, it almost always ensures that you're going to have a lengthy process, and we all know time kills deals, and hiring is no exception. A lengthy process will often cause the best candidates to drop out because other opportunities are presented to them, and they are going to lose confidence in your ability to make decisions. Furthermore, the odds of everyone agreeing decreases exponentially with the size of the group, and let's face it, not everyone's opinion matters. Number 5, lack of objective criteria. Early on in the process, you should establish the objective criteria, which you will measure all candidates against. These are the main categories you deem to be important to measure. Ideally, they're weighted differently and should be tied to the business objectives. For example, if you want the CEO to drive growth through a combination of geographic expansion and acquisitions, a demonstrated track record in these 2 specific areas might be the most heavily weighted objective criteria, whereas executive presence is lower on that list. But by establishing and measuring all candidates against these criteria, you can make an informed, evidence-based decision that removes biases. What am I missing?